This is Blind Ham News with stories of interest to blind and visually impaired hams. With today's report, here is Steve Bauer W0QA.
Amateur radio has given me the opportunity to speak with some very well-known people, and I got to meet one, well, I'll just say he's famous because he's famous as far as I am concerned. In no particular order, I got to meet Ronnie Millsap, WB4KCG, back in 1976, and Ronnie and I have stayed in contact over the years. Didn't really get a chance to talk to him as much as I would like to. Never did talk to him on the radio, but whenever he was in town or I was where he was touring, we always hung out after the show for a bit. I had a chance many years ago to speak with the late Art Bell, W6OBB. Now, we talked on the phone, not on his talk show, but we talked on the phone, and he recorded some liners that I used in our local airing of the amateur radio newsline that we did here in Wichita, Kansas. I had a chance to interview Owen Garriott, W5LFL, who was the first ham radio operator to operate a ham radio from space. Now, the one astronaut that I did get to meet was Ron Parise, WA4SIR. Sadly, he became a silent key in 2008 after battling brain cancer. Ron was a payload specialist, and he flew on 2 space shuttle missions, and he came to Wichita. I don't even remember why he was here, but he was here for a couple of days. He spoke at the local Wichita Amateur Radio Club meeting. My wife and I were given the privilege to go pick him up at his hotel, and we took him out for dinner, went to the meeting, and then took him back to his hotel, and then I recorded an interview with him that I edited and used on the amateur radio newsline. There was one interview that almost happened, and unfortunately it did not. I was scheduled to interview Senator Barry Goldwater, K7UGA, and I called his home at the appointed time, and someone, I don't know who this lady was that answered. I don't know if she was the maid or whatever, but whoever answered the phone, and I asked for him, and he was not there. And all she told me was that he was called in for a special vote. And so it didn't happen, but I tried and attempted to reschedule that interview, and it just never did happen. But we did try to talk to Barry Goldwater, K7UGA. So ham radio has given me the chance to talk with and meet some really cool people. And now, another story about a person who used ham radio to connect with someone that she had gone to school with back in elementary school.
Hello, my name is Jessica KE8UPE. I have a brief story about how ham radio allowed me to connect with an old friend of mine. I have a friend, his name is Jeff, and we went to elementary school together, and we've now reconnected thanks to ham radio. I actually heard him on air on Blind Hams. Actually, he heard me, and he wanted to drop in and say hi. And we just got another chance to talk here a few minutes ago. It's really cool to find out who you might run into on the radio. You never know. 73 KE8UPE.
I'm Steve, W0QA, and I'm talking with another Steve Bauer, WB6FZU from California. And we get confused between each other every now and then because we have the same name. It's kind of funny.
And we confuse ourselves sometimes.
It's true. We met back in 1990 at the ACB convention in Denver, Colorado. And I'm not really sure, other than maybe at the convention, that we've ever really talked on the radio.
No, I don't think so, actually. We talked about it a lot, but never actually did. So,
well, it's all interesting, and it's funny because you and I have been confused with each other over the years. I mean, I've actually received some equipment that you purchased that was sent to me.
That actually started in 1990. I never had a Braille and Speak, and so the first Braille device that I bought was a Braille pad from the old Arctic Technologies company. And I mean, it's just, I don't know how it happened. The guy took my credit card, took my address, the whole thing, and I waited and waited and waited and waited. And finally I got a phone call from Steve Bauer. He says, "Hey, you want a Braille pad?" And I go, "Yeah, I'm waiting for mine to show up." And he says, "It's sitting here on my kitchen table."
Oh, I know. And when we both were Window Eyes users, and I always had to make sure when I talked to them, I made sure I told them I'm the Steve Bauer from Kansas, not California.
Yes, yes.
And I guess there's another one of us in New York as well. I've never
yeah,
talked to
in the
him.
GW micro database, yes, there is, and I think he's in the Humanware database also because, at one point there was half a dozen Steve Bauers because they had me in 2 or 3 different times with my home address, and then I used to do a lot of business with Humanware when I worked at Braille Institute, and so they had me in as that address, and the guy in New York, and it was interesting.
And I know, because when I purchased something from Humanware a year or two ago, I had to make sure that they were doing the right person, not you.
Oh, that was the shock of my life. I mean, somehow I think it was on an election night. I can't remember, but I was just looking at my bank statement for one reason, and like my balance is like several $1,000s over what it should be on my credit card. And it's like, oh my God. And I went and looked, and yeah, sure enough, there was I don't know. I guess it was APH when you got
Yes.
your Mantis.
Yes,
And
exactly.
so I called Steve and said, "Hey, what's going on?" And we figured out what's happening. And so I don't know. I called APH right away, and she went and looked, and she was so apologetic. She says, "Oh my God, I can't believe I did that. I just clicked the mouse on the wrong, blah 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 blah. It will reverse the charge immediately. I'm so sorry." And
Well, I'm just glad that our call signs aren't close.
oh yeah, exactly. That would be crazy. That would be
It
crazy.
really would be nuts, but
Because there's enough else that's way too close. I mean, we were born in the same year, I believe, and we both worked in radio over the years, and of course ham radio and all kinds of stuff like that.
the radio stuff was interesting because I have been involved with smooth and contemporary jazz since, I started listening to it in 92 and been doing it on the radio since 01. And there was a time you were a music director at a smooth jazz station in California. And
Exactly, yeah.
I remember when we just started doing some streaming back when we used modems. Oh my gosh! And I had you on one evening, and my wife was in the living room, and she came in and she goes, "How are you on the radio now?" It was so confusing. It's hilarious.
The real interesting thing about that was I was downsized from that job in 2003, and because I was music director, I dealt with a lot of the record label folks, as did Steve for his show. And I got a couple of different calls saying, "Oh my God, you're moving to Kansas?" And I'm like, no,
No.
I'm moving to Los Angeles. I was in Santa Barbara at the time. And he's like, "But Steve Bauer, you're doing Smooth Jazz USA." I said, "No, that's a friend of mine." And he's like, "Well, yeah, but he said he's blind." And I said, "Well, yeah, he is blind too,
And that's what's even, the connections are amazing. And I like you were saying, I would speak to different artists, and they would talk to me like, "Oh man, it's been a long time since I've seen you. How wait a minute, no, we've never met," and you try to explain it, and they just, what? How can this be?
Yeah. And of course, within the blind community, it's the same thing. A lot of places I go on ACB because your show started out on ACB, what is now ACB Media, ACB Radio. And so when my name comes up, "Oh, it's Steve Bauer from ACB Radio." And it's like, well, actually not. It's a different guy.
It's kind of funny. Well, let's touch on amateur radio for a moment. Are you active on the air? Are you doing anything on radio these days?
I'm really not. I have an old Kenwood tri-band handheld radio that I turn on once in a while. I really can't tell you why, because ham radio was a huge part of my life for several decades. I guess I succumbed to Zoom and all the other stuff going on in my life that I'm not really, like I say, I turn it on once in a while when a friend comes to town I want to talk, or at ACB conventions, I'll use the radio because we use 2 meters to communicate, but not terribly active these days. No.
Well, that's kind of the way I am. I'm doing more of the digital stuff than anything right now, and it's very interesting and fun. But no, it's interesting how it all comes around and how we are so connected in so many ways. And I don't mind being misconfused for you every now and then. It's kind of fun.
Exactly.
Well, I appreciate you letting me put our story together for the podcast here and share how we've come together and crossed paths and uncrossed paths over the years. It's been fun.
All right.
Have a story or information to submit for the podcast? Send it by email to blindhamnews@gmail.com or call 662-426-6397. That's 662-HAM-NEWS. Thanks for your help.
I'm Steve W0QA, and that's the report this time. I hope you can join me again for another Blind Ham News podcast. 73, and thanks for listening.